Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm Logan Clements, one of your co-hosts. And in this week's episode, we are diving into one of the event processes that I use as a stage manager.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events Podcast. This is Mary Davidson, one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by fellow co-host Logan Clements. And in today's episode, we are continuing our deep dive similar to last week's episode. Logan is going to share her event process with us, a very deep dive into one of her event processes. So we'll get into it. But before we do, we have our conversation starter. So Logan, September always feels like a mini new year. Is there a new habit or routine that you're trying to start this fall?
Oof. I'm just going to say it, listeners. Oof. Great question, Mary. Because I have one that I honestly have had written down since January, and I've flip-flopped it. I've put a post-it in my net like halfway through the year. So I'm actually going to action it. And it is, I want to hire a personal trainer. I've played with the idea. I've toyed with the idea. I've had a virtual coach before, but this was something that came out at my end of year last year reflection of like, give yourself 3 months I used AI to make a little workout plan for myself based on like what I have in hotel gyms. And that helped. But yeah, I think I just need a human to hear my goals and understand them and help both craft a plan for me, but also actually have like in-person sessions so they can help adjust my form and everything. And it has taken so long because I feel like it's one, hard to find one you like, and two, it's expensive. And I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to do it. So it's a new habit I'm going to start in the coming weeks.
I'm so enthralled about this. I'm so excited to see your journey, to be honest. This is something I've always wanted to do with my life. So I'm going to live through you, and it's going to be amazing, Logan. So you better do it. This is me keeping you accountable. That's a good one. Now I don't know what to say about mine. Okay, mine is to bake bread. Which I think I've said this before. This is one of my like personal goals I've had for a long time, but I have a new member of the family. It is a sourdough starter that has just begun, and actually has not just begun. I got it from a friend, so it continues living on. And I did like a poll on my stories on Instagram about what to name it, and got a lot of feedback. Let me tell you, people are opinionated about this. And the name that won was Leonardo, Dough, Leonardo. So I'm going to bake some bread. That's mine.
And Leonardo will be with you every step of the way. I love it, Mary. I hope to be a benefactor of your bread baking. And, I love bread, so I'll eat your bread. I will not be making my own. I probably could eat the bread while talking to my personal trainer. That would probably be a good pairing.
Oh, I like it. Love it.
Well, hopefully, listeners, that gets you thinking about maybe something you're trying to start for the new year. Again, there's never a bad time to start. So that is kind of a fun aspect of the season right now. But we do want to plug our 2025 Better Events Conference. We are just 1 week away, guys, from our virtual day on Wednesday, October 1st. We are offering tickets that start at just $55 to join us for the virtual part only. We also have all access tickets if you want to join us on October 1st, watch those replays, watch those Brain Bites, which is our on-demand library, and then join us in person on December 18th in Seattle. I don't think we could put into words exactly all the feelings we have about how excited we are for this day, but listeners, I'm so excited. We do stuff just different than other conferences. We get to try and have fun in different formats that we've tried to convince clients to do, and maybe they've been hesitant, but you listeners, if you come to the conference, are going to get to do it. So get your tickets at bettereventspod.com/conference, and you can check out more about speakers, sessions, all that other good stuff. I could keep talking about it. So I will pause there, listeners, for you. But yeah, talking about this week's topic. Hopefully, if you haven't already, go back and listen to Mary's episode last week where I got to interview her about one of her event processes, talking all about being a day of event like coordinator. And that was really cool to do. And so now you get to be a fly on the wall on one of my processes, talking about stage management. And I do want to hark back. We did cover some of the basics of being a stage manager back in episode 148. That was over a year ago, where we kind of talked a little bit more about like who it is, what are good traits of one, just more of an overview. Versus now I'm going to walk you through my exact process, because this is something now I've done countless times over the years and a lot this year. So I will take you from hired to onsite as a stage manager at events.
Okay, I'm so excited to get into this. And also because, Logan, we're working with you in this capacity coming up. So now I got to see the behind the scenes of what's going on, which is so exciting. So we will get into it starting, as you know, pretty broad. So Logan, what does a stage manager do in a context of live events and conferences?
Yeah, so first, the jargon. I do see this role either called sometimes a stage manager. It is also sometimes called a deck manager, because you can also refer to the physical stage as a deck, or the decks that go together to put up a stage. So those two words are used interchangeably. But the stage manager, the best way to describe it is they are the hands and feet of the show caller, because the show caller is often stuck in one position because they're calling and queuing. And so the stage manager is the person actually, like, if a physical chair has to get on stage, like, stage manager is making that happen. If show caller wants a speaker to enter, the stage manager is the one standing by the speaker being like, 3, 2, 1, go now. So Mary, you were like giggling at me for that. It's a very good visual, I feel like, for people, where I'm like, I'm the hands and feet of the person directing everything.
I love that. You're really good at like analogies and things like that. But I am like, absolutely, that's true. Like 100%. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be everything, like I said, queuing speakers, you're making sure all the props, like, which would be if there's a big check getting presented, or if you're doing an auction, all the items that come with that, or just as simple as making sure there's chairs for the panelists out there. And you are really you're speaker facing in that role, and making sure speakers feel confident and comfortable before they hit that stage. And then there's a lot of other duties as assigned. Sometimes you're helping with microphones, sometimes you're not. But I think really you're just taking ownership of everything on stage looks good and is happening in the order and on time to the way that your show caller or your event host wants it to go.
And we think of some other roles and some that you've mentioned here, like a show caller or a producer. How is a stage manager different from those roles?
Yeah, so I think of the show caller, as the person queuing everybody. And I just recently had a project where I didn't have a stage manager for a sporting event I did, and I kept trying to think of, like, can I stage manage this and show call it at the same time? And the answer was no, because I was also the DJ and the audio, which is in a fixed position, and the stage manager role would need to be running around a lot. So again, the show caller is the one with the run of show, telling everyone what to do when, and the stage manager is taking in that information, helping whatever the physical things on stage that are happening. And then a producer, some shows don't have the budget to have a show caller and a producer. Sometimes they are one person. But I would say a producer in some of my larger shows, usually then I'm the middle person. So as Mary mentioned last week, she's the lead between client and maybe vendors, like the venue. Producer is like the client, the middle person between the client and the entire production team. And it's really helpful on those bigger shows where maybe you need to discuss something with the client to make that decision. When you're the show caller, you are locked in doing cues. You don't have a lot of time to have like a full blown pros and cons discussion. And so that's why it's helpful with those bigger and more complex things to have two different people doing that. And again, ideally as a stage manager, you're not necessarily wearing those hats, because you're like the show caller, having to actively be not just thinking about what's happening on stage, but what's happening next. And maybe even what's happening 2 things from then. You're constantly thinking ahead so that you're ready and everything moves seamlessly. We now interrupt this week's episode to tell you more about the 2025 Better Events Conference. You've heard us talk about it before, but Mary, let's remind our listeners what some of our key details are.
We'd love for you to join us on October 1st virtually. This is the first day of our conference. And we also have a second day, which is in person in Seattle on December 18th. Tickets start at just $55. So we're trying to make it very accessible so everybody can attend. So we would absolutely love to see you there. So let's go ahead and share some of our things that we're excited about. Logan, what's one of the things that you are most excited about right now?
I personally am really excited about our AI and action workshop. That is one of our virtual sessions where we're going to be actually having 3 experts walk you through how to solve an event problem using AI. So, we're not talking a big high level strategy. We are going to break it down to an actionable AI solution, which I just know, Mary, I cannot wait for. How about you? What's one thing you're looking forward to?
If I could just pick one thing, I am so excited about the executive power panel. This is something that I resonate with, but I'm sure a lot of you will resonate with as well. How often do we get 3 really experienced senior level leaders in a room to share so much expertise with us? And that's what this panel will be. So there's going to be lots of tips and tricks and lessons learned for everybody in the industry.
Yeah, so if you're looking to end your year with some connection as well as learning, this is truly a conference like no other where you are going to be getting tangible takeaways, not just this upcoming virtual day on October 1st, but also in person with us on December 18th. So hurry, get your tickets while you can, and we can't wait to see you at the 2025 Better Events Conference. Visit bettereventspod.com/conference or just check the show notes. Without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
So I think we'll get to this as the episode continues on, but if there's an event professional listening to this and they're like, I don't know if I have the skills to be a stage manager, can you just share like high level, how technical does a person need to be? Like how much do they need to understand microphones, for example, to be able to execute a role like this? Who can do it?
I mean, I think you have to, similar to a show caller, need to like to thrive under pressure and to be able to think very quickly on your feet. Um, so I just say that's like a trait, but you don't necessarily have to know a lot of tech. I always say I'm a little know enough tech to be dangerous. I think there's a lot more forgiveness and flexibility if you're doing a smaller event versus doing a really big one. Like I have some smaller associations that it's 100 people in the room, and I am producer/stage manager for that because it's one AV tech with me. And so that's a lot more easy for me to just be more flexible. My big corporate shows, as a stage manager, you got to have done a couple times as a stage manager because you got to know like, oh, I need to have certain things backstage for speakers. I need to make sure we've vacuumed the stage, like just certain checklists that you already have that just the client expectations are higher with a big show. I think a great way to get started to see if you even like this is to shadow someone, which shadowing is hard in this industry, but like for sporting events, usually it's a team of stage managers. It's not one. And so that's easier to be like, okay, I have some skills, but I want to learn some more of the technical stuff. Or if you're a volunteer at an event, usually the stage manager for like a nonprofit event will have a volunteer helping them. And that's a great way to also get your feet wet of understanding like what do they have to be in charge of. But at the end of the day, everybody has to do a role for the first time. So no matter what you do, you're going to have to start. And I remember early feedback when I was a stage manager at a sporting event was my first taste of stage managing. And I got brought on the project because I knew Chinese and I knew English, and all the stage managers spoke Chinese and our show caller spoke English. And so I was there to help bridge the gap, not because I knew anything about stage managing. And I remember my first feedback I kept getting was, Logan, you're too quiet, which I don't get that anymore. But it was like I was being quiet on headset, like I wasn't talking loud enough into this headset. And like that, just wearing a headset and having to communicate on it was like so new to me that I kept trying to figure out, am I hitting the right buttons? Is it far enough close enough to my mouth? Like all of that, that just took time. And the only way you learn that is by doing.
I think that context is so helpful because I've had a lot of emerging event professionals ask me how they can get involved in stage management. I'll usually try to connect them with you, Logan, and it seems like it's something of particular interest to folks I've noticed. So if that's you and you're listening to this, hopefully that context is helpful as well. But we're going to learn even more about it as we continue the conversation. So Logan, as part of your process, how do clients even find you to hire you for a show?
Yeah, this one has mainly been through referrals. So word of mouth. I feel like I get this question a lot from folks of like, yeah, how do you start? I'd say probably 80% of the work I do now as a stage manager is somebody knows me or has passed my name along to someone, and then they're hiring me. They're not necessarily putting this job description online and like taking open applicants. For my pro sports experience, those are open applications. And the funny thing is, every industry, while it's still events, like the sports industry uses different wording and verbiage when it talks about stage managing. Sometimes they call it a marketing assistant. Sometimes they call it a game presentation assistant, or the game presentation team, or even game day team. So those are words you can look and you can search and get hired for those roles. And I will say, like in Seattle here, most pro sports teams are openly recruiting each year because they just have turnover. Now, those aren't necessarily the most lucrative roles. And then I've just tried to be really explicit, like in my LinkedIn profile, to help with search of making sure on roles that I am a stage manager, I'm listing some of those not just in my like personal company description. I've actually broken out some of my roles just to help with my SEO for when people are looking on LinkedIn, whether they're random searching or they got my name from someone and they're using my LinkedIn as a way to like double check, oh yeah, does Logan know, what she's talking about? So, and again, a lot of times clients want to see that you've done something similar to then hire you for that role for the bigger projects. For smaller ones, again, it's a lot more just based on trust. Like Mary, you and I working together, it's, that I do a good job. So when you need a stage manager, I'm the person you're thinking of for certain projects. And that's just because we've worked together before. So it's a lot of word of mouth, but also a lot of me just trying to put it out there and tell people these are the kind of roles I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance there for sure because you do post a lot about that type of stuff, which I'm sure is entirely helpful as well. But word of mouth is hard, especially when you're getting started. You're like, but how can I do that? So I love the examples that you gave. So how do you base your services as a stage manager? So you're starting that process, you're setting those services. So things like your day rate, or is it hourly, the travel expenses, all of those things.
Yeah, so similar to you were talking about like doing your pre-hours, being a stage manager is not just your on-site work. There's also prep that goes into it. So I will, depending on the project, it's either a day rate, meaning I'm billing them the number of days I'm on site and then a set number of hours of prep. Or they liked me just to do it as a holistic project rate. So I say for your event to come stage manage, it's going to be $2,500 because that includes 3 days on site at this day rate plus these hours of prep work. I have a really tough time doing an hourly, even if someone's event's only like 2 hours long. I can't take another event that day. So it is taking up my day, even if it is not a full day event. So that's where you might get some pushback from folks. But so yeah, I usually do a day rate. It's usually more than what you would get if you were being like an assistant, but less usually than what I am when I'm show calling or producing, because in the like layers of responsibility, I would say producer and show caller is, they're top of the chain of kind of instructions and making run of shows and things like that. Stage manager, I'm owning the stage, but I'm not building your run of show. So I'm getting handed materials that somebody else has spent time prepping, and I'm just doing my checklist of things to make sure I have all the information I need so that when we're on site, I own the stage, but I'm not going to be telling the screens what should be on the screens. I'm owning the stage piece of things. And then also back to rate, like travel expenses. Right now, I only do events where they're covering all of my travel. I'd say I make the exception once or twice a year if there's like a truly exciting event that I'm like, I just really want to be a part of, and I'll cover some of it, or I know someone who lives in that city. But I laugh, my grandmother Nanny, if you're listening, which I know she does, she always asks, will they pay for your hotel too? And I'm like, yes, if they're gonna make me go stay somewhere for a week now, like they will be paying for it. But I say that in contrast that now 6 years ago, my first in the US stage managing role, I got hired as a quote unquote local for a show in Vegas, for an event in Vegas for 2 weeks. And I covered my hotel and I covered my Airbnb. And my day rate was nowhere near as competitive as what I have now. And that project I probably broke even on. But at that project, not only was I getting the experience of being like, yes, I can prove to you I can do it here in America if I did it in China, I also booked a new show with somebody I met on that event that was worth 5 times what, I had invested in my travel. So now I charge for all of my travel, but know that I came from a start when I was first trying to get experience. I covered some of that.
I think the context is really helpful to hear how it's shifted over time for sure, because you can still get started and kind of figure these things out as time goes on, similar to what you have. So super helpful. So you've set this up. Now you're hired. Yay! What are the first steps in your process leading up to the event?
I love at the start of a project because, Mary, we talk about, you and I we like to own the whole process. And so when you get brought in late, you don't have ownership over that whole process. So I always have to give myself grace that my first day or two of like getting the information about the event can often feel like, one, I'm either drinking from a fire hose, or like an example for an event I did recently, I was a stage manager And I was on some prep calls that I probably didn't need to be on now looking back, just because they were still figuring out details. And I'm like, I just need to know where we land. But they were talking about this thing, these like, they said the word speed bump. And I was like, I know what a speed bump is, but like, they're talking about it like it's a person. And like, I'm like, all right, I wrote it down in my handwritten notes. I'm like, look this up later. Cause I didn't want to derail the meeting being like, because I was like, maybe this is a famous person I've never heard of. Well, sure enough, it is Speed Bump. The armadillo is a mascot for a soccer team. And so that took me time. But like when you're hearing these terms, it like literally was like they were speaking another language. And I was like, Logan, it's like drinking from a fire hose. Just wait. Like the longer I'm in the project, the more I see if I can see run a show, like it'll help the pieces come together. And no, listener, I never would have guessed that speed bump was an armadillo. Like that did involve Googling and something I had to laugh about later. And so it's really just gathering all the information in terms of like the run a show or the show flow, whatever it is. Who are the key people that I'm going to be dealing with, whether it's the hosts on the microphone or the speakers on the microphone, or if there's an entertainment element, or and what does a stage even look like for my sports? Is it a soccer field? Is it a softball field? Is it an actual physical stage in a ballroom? Like just trying to get my head around all of those pieces. And that is why I often get pushback from clients, because I'm not as good as you, Mary, of doing like, I'm going to spend 2 hours on this event. When I do projects, I do 10 is my minimum, because, and I say 10 is usually a combination of like, we're going to do 2 to 3 prep calls. And I had a client once be like, cool, like, let's take that number down to 3 then. And I said, no, but 3 hours then is 3 hours of calls with you. I take time to review things. I won't be writing the run a show, but sometimes I make myself a cheat sheet. My really complex projects where I'm stage managing, like for my soccer event, I stage managed and I had a team of 15. And I was like, those 15 people are not going to know all the key props and places and locations just from looking at the master run a show. So I made literally a cheat sheet for them that showed times were the same, but it was more about like the who and where is this happening and what props do we need and who on my team is assigned to do that thing. And that took time. And I don't do that for everything, but that's an example. And then I always love to make a face sheet. So that's meaning if you're going to have Mary Davidson as my speaker, I'm going to have a picture of Mary on a sheet so I can just double check myself. And that, again, takes time depending on the event. Sometimes it's really easy to find people's photos like on LinkedIn or Google search, but sometimes it involves a little more detective work just to help myself out and anybody else who's working with me, that we're identifying the right person. Because I just find that builds rapport instantly if I can greet you by name and recognize you versus trying to figure out who's who when you're on site.
And one of those really amazingly helpful pieces of documentation is the run of show. So what is your approach to the run of show? Like what information is important for your role specifically as a stage manager?
Yeah. So like I said, usually as a stage manager, you're not writing the run a show. But step one, if you're hiring a stage manager, please have a run a show. But this is like, that's just so crucial. Similar to you, Mary, of like, you need a timeline. Like, I'm like, I don't know how you run an event without a run a show. Just stresses me out. But I would receive that run a show and then I'm reviewing it. And the things I'm paying attention to are, like I said, anything happening on stage or on camera, if it's a sporting event, video board, videos, graphics where they're just playing music and there's no physical something happening, I don't really have to pay attention to as much. But I'm kind of paying attention to like, who are all the speakers? What is the order? What's happening when? Do we have to move anything from one place to another? And I'm either highlighting that information in the run a show for myself, or like I mentioned, if it's a really complex project, I will make a cheat sheet. I did it with my basketball events. I've done it with some of my, like when I've managed breakout rooms where we were stage managing some different breakout rooms. I've made a cheat sheet, which again is based off the run a show, but a little more like simplistic view for people. And even as simple as like making sure I have a prop list. Like I make myself a handwritten list usually as I'm reading a run a show of like, okay, it says give away 2 tickets. Who's giving me the tickets? Are they printed? Do I need to print the tickets? What happens after I give the tickets? Do I need to write down this person's name? Like all those questions that come in the actual, again, execution of what's happening. And then, it's just, and not having that run a show is so important. So it's really the who's, the what's, what items do I need? How am I getting those items? And then just anything else that needs to be on my radar. If there's a photographer that needs to take pictures at a certain amount of time of things on stage, props, all of that good stuff.
I think it's such a good call out because I can just imagine a stage manager up there with no run of show and somebody walks up to them and they're like, "Who are you? Are you?" Like it just would be a mess. So I think it makes perfect sense. Switching to gear, we love talking about gear and all the little things that you could bring on site to an event. So what's in your stage manager specific go bag and what tools do you rely on most at showtime?
Oh, I love this one because it evolves as we talk about here on the podcast. I feel like you and I, Mary, constantly add things to our go bag. But when I'm hired as a stage manager, one, I'm having a bag on my person on site. And I have a bag that we've talked about countless times. It's from Amazon. It's a one shoulder backpack that I can swap shoulders, but it's perfect because for stage managing, because it can fit a bottle of water, it can fit microphones, it can fit host cards, it can fit any random item you need, which again, depending, like when I'm working sporting events, my stage is sometimes a whole football field. So I can't put things down. I need to have them on my person because you never know when you need stuff. But also, even when I'm working like a corporate show where I would have like my own stage manager area, having that on me, I can like clip my comms to it, which is helpful. So having a physical bag to hold things. And then I love me some gaff tape, GAFF tape. It's a special kind of tape that you can put down on cables and it doesn't leave a sticky residue. But as a stage manager, I have fun, bright colors because you never know when you need to spike something, which means like mark it on the stage of like, here's where I'm going to put this chair because you set it in rehearsal and you want to be able on show day to very quickly put it where you planned on putting it. Or maybe you need to put it for speakers to know like, oh, this X means that's the center of the stage. I want to hit that during my speech. Or you need it to highlight a bright yellow that I'll put like on stairs so that they don't trip coming up the stairs because it's sometimes darker on the corners of the stage. Just having like bright tape that you never know what you need it for. I think I talked in a recent episode. I loved it. I used it for one of my sporting events to create a line on the ground that I now call my line theory, which is if you have a piece of tape on the ground and say, don't cross this line, people won't cross it because when we see a line, our brains are like, oh, we need to stay behind that line. And that's how I kept all these players from peeking around a corner and being seen on TV before we wanted them to. So tape is really big. If you're dealing with a lot of speakers, you can have a bunch of speaker tools like tissues, breath mints, hand sanitizer. I would even have, because of our COVID days, like antibacterial wipes. So you can wipe down microphones as you hand them off. You definitely want to have water in some form for your speakers, whether that's preparing them before they go on or that you can replenish and put on stage. When I do shows in hotels, I feel like I'm constantly being like, where do we get the speaker water from? Because you don't want it to be a glass that could spill. It needs to specifically be a container that closes, usually a bottle of some form. I also always have pens and Sharpies. With sporting events, we have a lot of people who sign autographs, and you never know when you need something signed, and pens, because we always have people signing waivers if they're doing an activity or something with us. So always having countless like pens, Sharpies, even highlighters on me. And then your standard event like, oh no, I didn't know I needed case, which is everything from like Band-Aids to I've had Advil or eye drops. I don't even wear contacts, and I now carry eye drops with me for anyone who needs them. Earplugs were a big one I had for national anthem singers when I was doing sporting events. So over time, you'll kind of do that go bag. But I would say having a bag to keep things on you, gaff tape, pens, markers, Sharpies, and then your clipboard. I've talked about my clipboard that I love that has storage inside of it. You're going to be holding a lot of papers often, and making sure that you have that again on your person would kind of be my go-to 5.
Those are awesome. And the bag, I don't have the bag that you have, but the bag that you have looks amazing for this type of purpose. So I can see the value. Okay, so you have all your supplies, you're on site, you're ready to rock. What does the actual show day look like from call time to end of day?
Yeah. And again, every event's different, like we say. So like most recently, I'll walk you through a sporting event that I was a stage manager for. It's arriving at whatever your call time is, picking up your run a show for that day, usually printed off by your show caller. I will often have to print my own face sheet that I've made for the day, so I know who I'm dealing with. Or if it's a rehearsal day, we're printing off the rehearsal schedule so you know who to expect. And then I'm just, like I said, gathering all my materials. So getting my bag ready, double checking all of the microphones. Again, your audio person should be doing this, but I kind of, as the stage manager, I'm always like, have we tested that? Did we turn that mic on? Does it have fresh batteries, especially for multi-day events? And you're just kind of checking through all those things. You go out and check your space, making sure the props you left the night before, if you haven't brought them, you're setting up your props that day, making sure everything's set. And all your spike tape is down on the stage that you need it to be set at. And you're just kind of getting all your ducks in a row before, once speakers are in the room, you're really kind of at their mercy, where you're really much like a lot of one-day events. We have speaker rehearsals and then we get into our own, the actual show. And so that pre-time before speakers arrive is like your only time to kind of gather everything you need. And so I just make sure I have everything on me. And then when speakers are there, I am up by the stage, helping, making sure they understand, how to get on the stage, how to get off the stage, here's where they stand, and then answering and relaying any questions the show caller has for them about maybe their section of the program. And then confirming ahead of time with your show caller if this kind of rehearsal with a speaker is a true, like, do you have time for them to truly run through everything they want to say? Or is it more, hey, we're just going to practice your walk on and your first couple sentences so our audio person gets your levels, and then we're going to have you walk off stage because we only have a 5-minute rehearsal and you have a 30-minute presentation. So that's kind of stuff. You are like, again, the hands and the feet by the stage, relaying stuff back to your show caller kind of before doors open. And then once doors open and you're in show, like, you're in it. It's kind of my favorite part of events. You talked about loving being on site, Mary. Like, I love being on site, and I especially love showtime. It reminds me of my like sporting days where we would practice, and then like you have a game, and it would be like, it doesn't matter how much we practiced. It's all about how we actually do it when the lights are on. And that's what I feel when I'm doing stage managing or any kind of live event production. It's really fun and stressful at times, but like fun to do that. Hey, we practiced this flawlessly and the speaker knows they're supposed to be here, and all of a sudden we can't find the speaker. So what are we doing? We're running around, we're trying to find them, we're stalling, we're doing what we need to do. But I always say, as a stage manager, your job is to convey confidence and calm to your speakers so that they're hitting the stage, ready to do their best. You're not necessarily concerned about what they're saying. You're just making sure they know how to get on, how to get off, and that the next speaker's ready. So there's no awkward lulls in those transitions. That's where you kind of thrive. And same thing with props, and just making sure everything is good to go. So, and then, once the event's over, everybody's just kind of happy. And the nice part with being a stage manager, your post process is pretty short. Sometimes your production team or your client wants to meet to talk through results, but sometimes they just want a couple bullets of like maybe some suggestions for next year. And so I like those events a lot because I can own a piece of the event, but I'm not necessarily owning the whole event. And so once the event day's done, often I'm not having to do much apart from maybe jot down some of my thoughts.
Yeah, that was one of my questions about the role too. Would you say it's probably hard to compare, but for the stage manager role, it feels like obviously a significant lift. It is an important job, but perhaps less of a lift than a show caller or perhaps a producer. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I would say less. I mean, again, not every event's that way. Like when I work a sporting event where I've been running around a whole soccer field, it's funny then when I hang out with the show caller after, they're like, wow, my back hurts from sitting so much. And I'm like, I'm dead because I was running around and truly sometimes actually having to run from thing to thing. So maybe it's just like difficult in different ways. You're also more fan or attendee facing as the stage manager sometimes versus like show caller producers often like at a tech table or hidden up in a control room and like people don't see them versus like when I do sporting events and I'm a stage manager, you have people asking you most random questions because you have a headset on and you look like you know what you're doing. And like, that's just a part of it. But yes, in terms of responsibility, you have less. Like there's certain things as a stage manager, they might say like, Logan, I'll default to where you think this looks the best, like in terms of positioning someone. Or they might say, Logan, I want them standing exactly this way, facing this way. And I'm just relaying that to the person who needs to listen to those directions. So it's less decision-making at times. But again, I also feel like it is a really crucial part, and you do get to be a little more also like the speakers actually talk to you and you get to know them, and they're usually quite nice if you're being nice to them, unless a couple personalities who aren't, but most people are. And so that's like it's a little more human touch side of the event world compared to producing or show calling.
That's a good point because it is kind of funny, just like the limited amount of experience I have with it. It seems like you see someone's true self when you're a stage manager, and then as soon as you tell them to go on, they're like different mode. And it's pretty cool actually to see the shift sometimes.
It is. I mean, I always joke sometimes of like I was stage managing a sporting event. And I told my host, I was like, I'm your emotional support animal. Like, I am just here to make sure you feel comfortable and like know what's going on. And they kind of giggled at it, but like, no, it is right. Like, they had an in-ear, so they had an earpiece in their ear with the producer talking to them, but they'd be like, I trust them, but I trust you more, Logan. So I'm going to be like looking at you to make sure. And I was hearing what they were telling them. So I could be like, yes, it is truly 3, 2, 1. Or what are we about to do? Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about the referee or, and I joke even with a CEO or someone that, yeah, they might be the most unassuming, quiet person when they're not on stage. And it's like, then they go out there and they're all of a sudden like in go mode. Or some people are really extroverted on stage and they come off stage and they are just as extroverted and you love them that for them. I think I always think as like a stage manager, like I said, you're that calm for them ahead of them hitting the stage, because you don't want them worried about like, will my mic work? And if you are a stage manager that's like all over the place and frazzled, like that energy will transfer to your speakers and make them not trust you as much. Something I also talk about, and you know this, Mary, because I do it on the podcast, of like backup plans. And that's controversial to some people still, which I can't believe. But like as a stage manager, I always talk to my speakers about, here is what happens should your mic turn off or blip or something. Here's what we would do. And usually it's, if your mic blips for a second or two, just keep talking. If it completely cuts out for more than 5 seconds, myself or someone from our team is going to be coming from backstage and handing you a handheld mic. 9 times out of 10, I'm met with calm for that, of people like, okay, great. Cause I'm like, and it's a lot of what I do is very empathetic of like, if I were you, the fact that you've told me that is going to make me, when it does, if it cuts out, which, listeners, knocking on all the wood, this really has not happened. And I think it's because we talk about it. But if it does, then hopefully I'm helping them not have that moment of panic of what do I do? And they might be able, their brain is like, Logan, or the team mentioned someone would be coming. And in my 5 years so far, and that I can remember back that far, like, I think this has only happened once where I've had a speaker where a mic didn't work. And it was human error. The person speaker turned it off themselves because they were futzing with it in their pocket. But sure enough, we did that. We ran them out of handheld mic. As we made it halfway across the stage, the guy turned it back on in his pocket and kept talking. So then our person just walked right back off stage. And like, that's fine. But again, I would just think, you're that person helping make sure the speaker feels ready to rock.
That's awesome. And there's lots of different parties that you've already identified that work with the stage manager, but if it's like a client or an event lead, what can they do to make that partnership more successful for you?
I mean, a lot of what you had, like from your episode last week, I feel like is, just making sure you have key information and accurate information of what needs to happen when. I have only done like once or twice an event where they've had a stage manager and no show caller. And that's been really extra stressful. Like, again, you need someone kind of directing the ship. And I think the show caller is someone that does that. I have also had, not to get away from this skill, but like I've had where I've been hired as a show caller and then we have a volunteer be the stage manager, which again, not saying that a volunteer couldn't do it, but that is something that like a way you could have someone with extra, hands for it. But my biggest thing with clients is I always say it's not just a day of role. You have to have some prep in there, because sure, they could always cut all of that stuff, but then you're going to have me asking questions that I could have asked a week ago. Now I'm taking up time on site to realize that. Or to your point of like looking for holes or gaps of like, yeah, so you mentioned a big check. Who's giving us the big check? And they look at you. They're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you have a couple days to print said big check, and then I can make sure that gets to where it needs to go, So that would be that. And then I always like to talk through some backup plans and like, what things am I empowered as a stage manager to just problem solve and then bring it up in the postmortem after the event, versus what decisions do we need to like rally up the chain, which again, with experience, I feel like I'm more comfortable understanding, especially if it's like a budget implication. Like, no, I can't make that call. I have to ask higher up. But if it's like, I see water bottles that I know this is a corporate event and they've got labels on them, I'm just going to delabel them, because we know we like a naked water bottle over Fiji waters not getting a free promo at the event or whatever it is. Like, there's certain stuff I would just know.
And then I'm sure there's so much more that we could share, but if we could boil it down into one last question, what's one piece of advice that you would give someone who's thinking about adding stage management to their skill set?
Yeah, I think if you're someone who, again, thrives under that kind of like game time pressure of making decisions and doing stuff at events and you're particularly like a calming presence at events, stage management is for you. And I would just give it a try. You can either start pitching it as a service you offer, and just, I would be a little transparent of like, you have limited experience maybe doing that exact kind of event as a stage manager when you first say it. But or try to shadow someone and like get in and be a part of a larger team where there's multiple stage managers with larger shows, or that volunteer shadowing, because it's the chicken and the egg. You need the gig to get the experience, but you need the experience to get the gig kind of thing. That I just encourage you to try it. I have really enjoyed it. And you will see in this world, there's a lot of folks who make the transition from theater into corporate because theater naturally has stage managers. And I always joke, if younger Logan could have known, I could have, because I like theater. I'm a fan of theater, and I just never put it together that there are stage managers and props at sporting events. And even just corporate events or big live events have stage managers and props. I, for some reason, always just thought they were only in the theater world. And so that is something that like you might be interested in those, but also being like, but I like, dealing with sports, or that theater. There's a lot of people who realize theater doesn't pay as well. So they do theater part of the year, but they also do corporate to help them increase their income. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I think you just need to jump in and figure out where you fit.
I think that's awesome. And when I've sent people your way, they've been able to get connected with opportunities to stage manage like a sport event or a corporate event. And it is great to see the two different kinds of events, because it is a little bit of a different vibe, right? And so I love what you said, and encourage everyone who's interested to do the same thing. Just try it and try to shadow to get started, if nothing else, and see what you like. So Logan, you've shared so many tips and tricks with us today about your process to do stage management. So thank you so much for all of your expertise.
Yeah, thank you, listeners. Hopefully you learned something new, have something you can apply to your process, or better work with the stage manager on your next show, kind of understanding what they do and don't do. But yeah, Mary, this brings us to the end of the episode, and you have our bonus tip this week.
I do. Okay, so for our bonus tip, don't forget to consider mileage in your pricing if applicable. So for example, I was just quoting an event that is about an hour and 45 minutes from my house. It's long enough away and far enough, it's like pretty like up in the mountains, that I almost forgot to add that. And then I did the math, and for the team members that we would have on site, it was like almost $500 worth of mileage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I remembered to do this. I'm not the type of person that goes back and charges for that type of thing. I try to put it in the pricing from the beginning. And so this is your friendly reminder to not forget to consider mileage in your pricing if applicable.
That's a great one, Mary. Yeah, I think that's an easily overlooked, but as you said, $500, that's not small beans. So don't forget your mileage, folks. And that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can send us an email at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also join us next week for the Better Events Conference by visiting bettereventspod.com/conference. You can also connect with Mary and I directly on LinkedIn. We love hearing from you as well, but just put it in that little message feature that you heard about us through the podcast. And if you want even more Better Events content and to financially support what Mary and I do, join our private community on Substack. And as always, we thank you for listening. And we will be back in your feeds again next Wednesday, but we will also be at the Better Events Conference next Wednesday. And hopefully we get to see you there on October 1st.